All right, on a weekend everyone usually gets really excited for, IndyCar unfortunately was a complete dud this weekend. Let's get into it. Yeah, so the partial repave at Iowa turned out to be really underwhelming, unfortunately, for the IndyCar series. And I don't know, I'm not going to go fully in depth into both races. I'm just going to hit some main points from the weekend. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so Scott McLaughlin obviously won day one on Saturday. This race was kind of a mess. Obviously, nothing really happened, so guys just tried to do stuff. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe the race. Really, nothing happened except when they wrecked, which it's hard to believe they even did all as much as they did, because, like, what were they trying to do? Like, you couldn't do anything, really. I don't know. This sounds like I barely watched the race, but I did. I sat there and watched it, and I kind of wish I hadn't. I felt like I wasted 5 hours of my life this weekend, to be completely honest. We can talk about the tires. The tire wear was completely non-existent, which hard to believe. Obviously, they repaved the turns at Iowa. This is what happened. NASCAR did before their Cup race there a couple weeks ago. Again, everyone's kind of labeling this as sabotage by NASCAR. I kind of doubt it, because, I don't think they're thinking that. Unfortunately, what makes a NASCAR Cup Series race good and what makes an IndyCar race good at this point are not really the same things. But even on top of that, Firestone completely dropped the ball. The tire wear, they kept talking about it, was this fine dust. And if you got outside of the one groove we were running, then you couldn't do anything. Guys were seriously, like, the entire race just kind of riding in position for the most of it. I mean, Alex Palou in race one was able to make some moves at some points. Obviously, Joseph Newgarden came up from 22nd, but really that was only because it was really only due to having the amount of cautions they did, and they got it cleaned up and you were able to use the outside for a couple laps. Still tough to do, obviously, but he was able to make that work. And Santino Ferrucci came up. He ended up a lap down because of a jumping the start penalty, and wound up to come back and finish sixth. So guys were able to move at points, but it was, again, usually coincided with a restart, and really once it got going, there was nothing you could do. Okay, obviously the big moment in race one was when Alex Palou wrecked. It looked to bring the championship a little closer, and it wound up kind of helping as far as the championship battle goes. At least that day. Obviously Sunday he finished second, so it didn't really stick. But anyway, yes, Scott McLaughlin won race one, Pato O'Ward second, Joseph Newgarden third, Dixon fourth, VK fifth. Obviously I mentioned Santino Ferrucci sixth, Kyle Kirkwood seventh, Alexander Rossi eighth, Marcus Ericsson ninth, Colton Herta 10th. Okay, race two, even less happened in race two. Honestly, Will Power was able to win by jumping Alex Palou in the pits, which is similar to how Scott McLaughlin won race one. Obviously, Scott McLaughlin was dominating early, and then on a pit cycle, unfortunately, the caution came out because Agustin Canapino ran out of talent, spun out, exiting the pits, and trapped a bunch of cars lap down except Will Power and Alex Palou. And then the next time they pitted, Will Power was able to jump Alex Palou because he had saved fuel running behind Alex Palou. So again, that was pretty much all that happened. They tried to they tried to drum up excitement in the booth again. Last race for Lee Diffie. So thanks to Lee Diffie. I always enjoyed his calls. I know everyone didn't, but I always did. And I'm looking forward to hearing him in NASCAR. It should be a nice refresher. Will Power won the race. Obviously, Alex Palou second, Scott McLaughlin third. So that's 2 podiums for him on the weekend. Scott Dixon fourth, Colton Herta fifth, Pato O'Ward sixth, Joseph Newgarden seventh. He was, again, with the lack of yellows, he was not able to climb as high up as he did on Saturday. Graham Rahal 8th, Rinus VeeKay 9th, Roman Grosjean 10th. The most interesting thing that happened in the entire race was Stingray Robb completely launching off the back of Alexander Rossi. And from everything I've been able to gather, Rossi was struggling at the end of the race or close on fuel or whatever, and he'd been running slower for a while. and Stingray just kind of wasn't paying enough attention. That's what I've been able to pick up from it. And then obviously Kyle Kirkwood and Ed Carpenter kind of piled in the back just because, they got on the brakes pretty hard and ended up slamming into the wall, collected Alexander Rossi again. And luckily, Stingray was airlifted to the hospital and then released. He was okay. So that's really good to hear. But yeah, unfortunate into a complete nothing burger of a race, unfortunately. Going ahead and looking at the standings, Alex Palou is still the points leader. Will Power has closed in to 35 points out. Pat O'Ward in third is now 62 points out. He had gotten a lot closer on Saturday, and then unfortunately, just the way everything played out, he was not able to keep up with that. And that's pretty much your title fight. Obviously, Scott Dixon's about 5 points back of Herta. Honestly, at this point, really the only option is Will Power. I think it's either going to be Palou or Will Power. I'm guessing, obviously, we have a lot more ovals to go, but Palou did look good in both races as far as speed goes. So I think it'd be kind of surprising if suddenly he was not, still not the favorite. I don't know. We'll see. Scott Dixon in fourth in the championship. Scott McLaughlin fifth. Colton Herta sixth. Kyle Kirkwood seventh. Alexander Rossi eighth. Newgarden ninth. And Ferrucci in 10th still. So a lot of the same players holding on to the same spots. Okay, lastly, I want to touch on the comments Ed Carpenter had at the end of the race. And he basically said, we've spent a lot of money to put an extra 100 pounds on the car and not make the racing any better. And in fact, he implied that the racing has gotten worse, which if you look at the last 2 weeks, it's hard to say he's wrong. But also, I feel like you're kind of jumping the gun a little bit on saying that. Now, I would definitely say it hasn't affected it at all. There's no visual difference. Like at Mid-Ohio being there, I could not tell a single difference between an old Mid-Ohio race and this one. Obviously, Iowa is a little bit of a different scenario, I'd say, just solely due to it being a repave. I don't think this would have been a good race last year if it had been repaved like this and if we didn't have the hybrid unit and the harder tires or whatever. But yeah, I see where he's coming from, because if you're gonna add weight to the car, again, IndyCar is in desperate need of a new chassis at this point. I've been in agreement with that for a while now. They're running, obviously they're still running the DW12 chassis, and we've sort of tweaked it to death at this point, and I don't see how we're going to make this better without a complete overhaul and a proper actual integration of the car, like of all the new units, the aero screen and the hybrid unit. I don't really see how we're supposed to get as much out of these elements as we can if we're still just kind of tacking them on to an already existing car that worked in a completely different way when it was designed. And even if you just take this aero kit to begin with, these two elements were not a part of the equation when they made these. So that was 2018. Obviously, we added the aero screen in 2020, and we added the hybrid unit last week at Mid-Ohio. So anyway, that's some things to look at in the off season. Obviously, they're not going to come up with a whole new aero kit or a new chassis in the off season, and for some reason it's not even being talked about, even though we're going to be coming up on year 7 of this aero kit and year 13 on this chassis. So definitely something that needs to be talked about seriously moving forward. Okay, IndyCar goes to Toronto next week. Hopefully we have a better race. Toronto's always been a fun track. And yeah, if you enjoyed this, leave a like. If you didn't, dislike. Subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see you back here again for the next episode.